Hello everyone and welcome back. This is Dr. Padama and this time we are going to discuss how to write a thematic literature review. Before we go on to our discussion for today, please support my YouTube channel by clicking that subscribe button and that notification bell to alert you when a new video has been uploaded just like this one. And if you have already subscribed, please do click that like button or thumbs up button for this particular video. Now, going to our discussion for today. Literature review is a very significant, crucial part of research writing. There are different approaches, methods, and ways for you to be able to write the literature review. And one of them is what we call the thematic approach. Thematic approach of writing the literature review. So what do we mean by thematic approach? So instead of organizing your literature review by the classifications, of literature reviews or literature sources, instead of classifying them from local to foreign, and then local foreign literatures, and then you have from literature, again you go to the next requirement, which is different studies, and then from studies you will be again required to produce local and foreign studies. So instead of using that particular format, you now go to what we call the thematic approach in writing the literature review. So how do we do this? We now disregard that particular format that I mentioned earlier, classifying them from local to foreign, and instead using the following parts. So I'm going to give you the following parts. We have introduction, we have the theme, and then we have synthesis. So we are going to go through the following, and then eventually later on in our discussion, I will be showing you an actual example of a study thesis that was already presented and how that particular study approached the writing of literature review using the thematic approach. Okay, so the first part is the introduction or the introductory statement. So the introductory statement contains the following and requires you to include the following. A good intro has to meet the following criteria. Number 1, make a clear and understandable definition of the paper thesis and make a logical transition to the review. So the introductory statement will prepare the readers what they will be able to expect while reading that particular part in relation to the study that they are trying to critique or analyze. So this is, as the term implies, an introduction to what they are going to read in the preceding part of the paper. So make sure you clearly state the definition and the objective of the paper on this part of the study that you are conducting. So this is an introduction, okay? So simply put, it's an introduction of what the readers will expect on this part of your study. Number 2, reflect the author's rationale for the review. Rationale refers to your motivation, or specifically the reason why you are conducting this review of literature. So briefly state that particular rationale of the study, and you can also do this by stating and citing the relevance of conducting thematic literature review to your study. Why is it important that you need to cite these literature reviews in your studies? Of course, you need to identify and prove through the citations of different references that there is an actual gap in your research, and you do this by presenting different literature reviews. So that's one way of using this literature review and presenting the rationale for the review. Okay? The next one is clarify how the data is organized. So instead of using the approach of classifying it from local to foreign, you state that this particular literature review will implement the thematic approach instead of the traditional or the usual approach in writing the literature review. The next one, make a short transition to the content. So from the introductory statement, from the introduction, you now transition and go to the content or the main body that leads to your research topic. Okay, after presenting a brief introduction containing the following parts, you now transition and move to the theme. Okay, the theme is already considered as the main body. So what do we mean by the theme? The theme should be written in deductive method. This is very significant. When you write the theme using this approach, it should be written in deductive method. Deductive method refers to or is illustrated as an inverted pyramid. Inverted pyramid where the top portion, the base portion located on top, is or contains the general information, the general discussion, while at the bottom you have the specific discussion or the objective of your study. So again, that is what we mean by deductive method of writing. This is, again, let me emphasize, from general discussion to the specific discussion or the goal or objective of your research. So after setting up your method of writing, you now go to the inclusions. What should be included in the discussion of this particular part of your review? Number one, the list of sources organized in accordance with the topics. The topic should be organized in deductive method from general to specific. Okay? So, prepare the list and make sure you organize. That is why it's called thematic. You organize the idea on how you're going to present your argument for your study, that there is in fact a problem, an issue that needs to be investigated, and this will transition towards the objective, the goal of your research, which is part of the specific discussion in the inverted pyramid that I showed you earlier. So the list of sources organized in accordance with their topics or in chronological order, the order that I presented, which is general to specific. The next one, an explanation, a discussion of every subcategory. Discuss, explain every subcategory of sources relevant or relevance, as well as how they are connected with each other. How are these topics from general to specific relevant or related to each other? So you have to maintain a continuity in the discussion from the first part, from the first category down to the last category that you are discussing. Again, we are being guided by the term thematic. All of them should follow a specific flow, making sure that they are relevant with one another, and at the same time presenting an argument that there is a need to conduct the study and there is a research gap that needs to be filled with this particular or with the accomplishment of this particular study. Okay. The next one, again, the explanation of every subcategory sources relevant, as well as how they are connected with each other, and the main topic of the paper. Okay, so again, this will fall under the discussion of general to specific under deductive method. The last part is already the synthesis of the paper. When we talk about synthesis, this is not just combining two variables, but also trying to cite the relevance. The relevance refers to how how the variables are related to each other. So, in your study, you're trying to identify the reasons behind a particular issue. Now, you're using the RRL, Review of Related Literature, in order to support your claim that is found in your study. So, your study should always be related to the citations or literatures that you are discussing. So always try to find and establish the relevance of your study with the literature that you are discussing. So the literature review that you are discussing is now arranged in thematic approach. So again, when we say synthesis, this is finding, stating, presenting, discussing the relevance of your study to the citations that you are discussing in your literature review. So what should this contain? Number one, make a summary of all significant points drawn from the literature. Do not copy-paste everything that is in the literature or the reference that you are using, but instead, get the significant points or the important parts. The significant points that you need from the reference that you are using. You do not need to include all parts of the literature that you are using in your study. So you really need to read. And then once you come across with that particular part that is relevant to your study, then by all means get the significant point and use this in your study. Okay? So that is what we mean by summarizing, by getting the crucial and significant points and using it or citing it in your study. Okay, the next one, make a critical evaluation of the current reception of the reference sources. So, try to not totally give a conclusion on that particular reference, but try to cite the relevance and try to reiterate and reinforce that according to this one, in his study or in his article, it is stated that, and then you try to confirm, which is also true in my study. Try to cite the similarities of your study with the literature that you are using so you can establish what we are discussing on this particular part, the critical evaluation of the current reception of the reference sources. So confirming that this particular source really agrees with the study that you are conducting. Okay, the next one, make suggestions regarding the possibility of further research. So we are already on the closing part. So try to recommend possible researches, but this is different from the part or the latter part of your research, which is chapter 5 under recommendation. This one is not required. So this is on the part of your literature wherein if you come across other studies that may be related to the study that you are conducting, but it is not included in the scope of your study, then by all means you can suggest this particular study for further research. And the last part is explaining how your study fills the gap or the research gap. How does this particular study fills the gap in relation to the reinforcement that you are discussing in the literature review? The review of literature will now reinforce that there is an actual gap. So you really need to prove that there is a vacuum. No study has been conducted relevant to the study that you are presenting, and that this is necessary because of that particular reason. So explain how your study fills the gap in the existing knowledge of the matter or of the issue that you are conducting. So basically, the thematic approach is divided into 3 parts. So I divided this into 3 parts. It's like writing a composition wherein you have the introduction, the body, and the conclusion. So instead of using those parts, we have the introduction, the introductory statement. You have the theme for the thematic approach. And then you have the synthesis, which is very crucial in writing the literature review. So again, as I mentioned earlier, I am going to briefly show you, go through a sample literature review presented in a study in the graduate school level. So we are going to go to this particular example. Again, this is the review of related literature and studies. So remember the parts that we discussed earlier. The first part is the introductory statement. So this is what we call the introductory statement. Again, setting the expectation of the reader, what they will read preceding this particular statement. So this chapter presents relevant literature and studies that the researcher considered in strengthening, reinforcing the importance of the present study. So again, this is just a brief presentation of what is expected in the preceding part of your research. Again, it is stated here that you should write it in deductive method. And on this particular side, area 1, I labeled this so that you can follow the discussion based on the topics. So this is topic 1, subtopic 1, and the label or the heading is inquiry-based learning. So this is the concept that the researcher will use in order to support the strategy that he is or the researcher is trying to use or is using in their study. So their concept is inquiry-based learning. So they started with the concept. So what is inquiry-based learning? And this is done by citing it from this particular author, Davis, 2018, and so on and so forth. So from this particular discussion presenting the concept, we move on to the next part. But before we move on to the next part, this 5-year rule in literature review is what we use in our institution. So what do we mean by 5-year rule? If the current year is 2022, so you subtract 5, then you have 2017. Is that correct? So it's 2017. So this means that the literatures that you're supposed to use or the sources that you need to use should be from 2017 and above. So to the current year. So 2022 to 2017. So 2016 will still be accepted. But beyond that, 2015 and so on should not be considered as part of the literature review anymore. So this is what I call the 5-year rule in writing the literature review. So in this case, I try to look at the references used if they are still considered or not. That's why you have the following. Okay? So again, we started with the first subtopic, which is the concept under literature review. And then citations are used to reinforce and support their claim. So again, as you can see, 2013 is used here. So this is not advised anymore. And then the next subtopic is math talk, which is already the strategy that they will use. So you have the concept and then you have the strategy, which is the second area for the discussion. This is why it is called thematic approach. You do not use the classification headings of local, foreign, for literature and studies anymore. Okay, so after discussing the strategy, we now go, so again, if you can observe, this still implements the deductive method from general to specific. From general to specific. And we're going to verify that on the last topic if it was really specified on the goal of this particular research. So after the discussion of the strategy, we now go to the next heading, which is the area This is already in relation to the specific problem being discussed in the research. So going to the next topic, another is the same. This is still part of the specific problem, the specific problems. These are the problems encountered in teaching and learning mathematics. So again, this follows the deductive method of writing. The last part, if you remember in our discussion, is what we call the synthesis. So this part is now known as the grand synthesis. So the last paragraph is usually where the grand synthesis is located. So this is the summary of the review of related literatures that you discuss. So again, this is supposed to be the output of a study that utilized or used the thematic approach in literature review. And some students, some viewers always ask me, technically how many pages? 10 pages or 8 to 10 pages is already enough, technically speaking. But again, in our institution, we do not set a particular number of pages for the literature review. What the concept that we use is as the need arises. If there is still a need to prove that there is a research gap, that there is a need to support the issue, the issue is existing and there is a need to conduct the study, then by all means, you can go beyond what is set from what was given to you. Okay? So, do not include literatures that are irrelevant to your study. That is another rule of thumb. Okay? So, you can go beyond the standard number of pages but do not include literature reviews that are irrelevant to the study that you are conducting. So again, thank you very much everyone for listening in this particular video discussion on how to write a thematic literature review. So again, I'm going to show you the parts. So this is the first one, the introduction, the theme, and the synthesis. So please support my YouTube channel by clicking that subscribe button and that notification bell to alert you when a new video has been uploaded. And before you go, video references, video recommendations for your other parts, other needs in research writing will be presented on the side of your screen. Please do check them out. Thank you very much everyone. Stay safe and God bless. See you on our next video. Keep learning. Bye.